This is the heart of Africa, and it has never been bloodier. I came here first to report over 30 years ago, and I witnessed things then that I prayed I would never see again. I'm back, and it's worse. Over 1,000 people die every day from murder, rape, and the diseases of war. This is a country where few expect to live long. How different it might have been. Congo is a country of huge potential wealth. It has immense natural resources, gold mines, diamond mines, cobalt, and coltran, that scarce vital mineral used for mobile phones and satellite technology. The world covets them, and yet bizarrely, the Congo suffers because of its riches. But the Congo sees none of it, and it's fast returning to the jungle. When the Belgians left 50 years ago, there were over 120,000 miles of tarred roads. Today, there is probably less than 1,000. This is the main street in Kivu's capital, Goma. After the rains this year, these holes will be even bigger, even deeper. And yet, in this country of mineral wealth, there is no money to repair it.
As we've seen in other African conflicts, this very wealth has proved to be a curse because it encourages corruption, it encourages the involvement of foreign interests in the country, and it encourages ultimately conflict over those resources between all the different actors in the country. So the very resources of Congo, the potential of Congo, if you like, is actually a cause of some of the conflicts and the problems that characterize the country.
This is the country the blueberries have been trying to tame on and off for the past 50 years. If they have any doubts about the eventual success of this mission, they keep it to themselves, or they try to convince us otherwise. Morale boosters are everywhere. They've put up clumsily written posters with emotive messages that more properly belong to other wars and other soldiers of a more heroic age. They do not belong here. Their outposts, small, well-protected garrisons, are ranged around this city. These troops are from Uruguay, they're well-trained, and they're committed. They want to succeed, and they know well enough what will happen if they fail. But they also know that under the current United Nations mandate, they are soldiers fighting with one hand tied behind their back, strangled by baffling rules that make a nonsense of their role here. Nothing is more confusing but the rules of engagement of these men. They cannot open fire on an attacker unless they're fired at first. And even then, they must give a verbal warning before they return fire. And only then can they use minimum force. And they mustn't risk ever one civilian casualty. Now you tell me, what soldier in any other army would fight under those conditions? And it gets worse. For example, these troops, Guatemalans on night patrol along the Congo-Rwandan border, are even expected, if under attack, to radio back to their headquarters for permission to return fire. Is it surprising, then, that they might be tempted to avoid any confrontation, as is so often alleged? And can you blame them?
Monuc has a problem with a contradiction of mandates. On the one hand, it has a mandate to protect civilians. On the other hand, it has a mandate to support the Congolese army, which is one of the most abusive armies in Africa. But the real problem, I think, emerges when there is no peace to keep, when the peacekeeping forces are actually drawn into existing conflicts or recurring conflicts.
It's so confusing and defeating and such a mess of do's and don'ts that one recently appointed general threw in the towel after only 2 weeks here and went home. But when I spoke to his replacement, General Baba Kage, he kept to the UN script. Present rules are fine, he insisted.
We don't want to turn this peacekeeping mission into a peace enforcement mission without the right mandate. Let me make it clear, we do not want to go through war. But if there is a need for the protection of the population, for, let's say, the purpose to maintain on track the process, we will use force as we did in the past. You need to use force in a very restrained manner. When you have the legitimacy for that, when you have a good force ratio, and when you are following good procedures, so that people against whom you are going to use force, they know that you are going to use force. They know that it is because they are wrong. They know that it is a restrained way, and if they stop, you stop.
Would you like to see the rules of engagement changed?
There is no need for that. They are very good. I'm sorry, but they are very good, and they are very wide. Everything is the rules of engagement. It is up to the commanders, but you know, rules of engagement will not, let's say, undermine the responsibility of the commander.
But to complicate things even further, his subordinate commander, General Bipin Rawat, had already gone public, saying, "My hands are tied. We cannot do what we have to do unless the rules of engagement are rewritten." But when I asked him to repeat it on camera, he made a tactical retreat, as his troops so often do.
I said, if we are a peacekeeping force, then we are carrying out a peacekeeping mission, and we are here to protect the population, and that remains our mandate. We here come as blue helmets. When we come as blue helmets, we are basically peacekeepers. And we come as peacekeepers, we have to at times hold our horses, because we are seen as neutral in this game. And therefore at times we have to make sure that we follow the rules of engagement very stringently.
The international community consistently looks to the UN. Send the UN, send the blue soldiers in, without giving the UN any of the instruments you need to fight a very tough kind of war. It doesn't have a command structure to speak of, it doesn't have any intelligence structure, it has no logistic structure, it has none of the things you need to keep young men and women reasonably safe in harm's way in war. And by the way, this is the most difficult kind of war. It's far more difficult to be one half peacemaker, half peacekeeper.
Stifled by their own rules of engagement, the UN is making the first determined attempt to create a unified Congolese army that can fight as it wishes. An Indian contingent of the Blueberries has opened this camp at Beni, close to the Congo's northern border with Uganda. And here they train recruits in routines familiar to any serviceman of any regular army. They're taught unarmed combat, small weapons training, ambush techniques, killing with a knife. Probably not a novelty to these men who, only a month or so ago, were rebel militia roaming the jungle ready to kill, rape or maim on anyone's orders. These men and boys, yes, some were as young as 12, have long terrorized eastern Congo, owing allegiance to any warlord who promised them the largest booty. What terrible secrets they must hide. What dreadful things they must have done. They have come to Beni voluntarily to surrender their weapons, and they're given the choice: return to their villages with money or stay in this camp and obey army discipline. But I wondered, as I looked at them, how many will simply refresh themselves here? Eat all the UN gives them, then steal a new weapon and quietly slip back into the forests to resume their old ways. If their instructors had the same suspicion, they didn't say so. It doesn't seem possible, does it, that they can transform those guys over there into these soldiers in uniform? But they say they do it. It takes about 3 months, and they tell me it is successful. But it is hard to believe, after so many failures, that any semblance of an army can be molded so easily, so quickly.
Remontage et démontage. Vous êtes prêts? Prêts. Go!
Remember that there hasn't been one completely loyal army to the Congolese government in all the 50 years since independence. You have to ask, with recruits like these, vicious killers who've helped tear this country apart, can you really create a disciplined army under central command, ready to defend law and order instead of destroying it, protecting the people instead of ravaging them? It's a long shot, and the odds are not good. But if it can be done, if these blueberries can manage it, then there is some hope. If they cannot, this country can only sink deeper into the mire.
Check it! Check it! Armor!